It was raining so hard my shoes squished with every step. My coat was soaked through, my grocery bag was falling apart, and honestly, I was one bad day away from quitting on everything. Then I saw him. An older man, standing completely still on the sidewalk, no umbrella, drenched head to toe, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my rent, just waiting, lost, maybe. I didn't even think about it. I just handed him mine. I said, "Here. You look like you need it more than I do." He asked for my name. I gave it, smiled, and walked away, half expecting to never see that umbrella again. But the next morning, there was a black limo parked outside my apartment. A driver was holding a sign with my name on it and a letter from him. I didn't know who he really was or what that umbrella meant to him, but that one small act of kindness was about to change everything. My name's Claire. I'm 26, and 3 days before I handed that umbrella to a stranger, I was sitting in the dark, staring at a blinking cursor and an overdue rent notice. I had $12.67 in my checking account, a fridge with mustard, expired milk, and half a bag of baby carrots. My phone was at 7% and I couldn't find my charger. That felt symbolic. I wasn't always like this. Just a year earlier, I had a good job, administrative assistant at a mid-sized publishing firm. I wasn't rich, but I could buy fresh fruit, cover rent, and even treat myself to a pastry on Fridays. It felt like a start. Then came the layoffs, budget cuts, restructuring. You know how they say it's not personal? It felt personal. I applied to job after job, hundreds. The polite rejections stopped coming after month 4. I started picking up part-time work at a used bookstore. I delivered food at night. I wrote resumes for people more confident than me. And still, I was sinking. No health insurance, no backup savings, and no family to call. My dad passed 5 years ago, and my mom remarried and moved states away with a man who thinks depression is just a lack of discipline. I kept a journal I never had time to write in. I kept a dream board I couldn't look at anymore. I kept trying until I started hoping for silence instead of opportunity. The day before it happened, it rained. Not just a drizzle, the kind of sideways, slapping wind rain that ruins your socks and soaks your soul. I had just left the bookstore, carrying a grocery bag filled with instant noodles, off-brand coffee, and the cheapest canned soup I could find, and of course, the bag ripped 2 blocks from my apartment. I just stood there on the sidewalk, soaked, holding a can of soup in each hand, trying not to cry, trying not to care. But it was hard. Everything felt heavy. My body, my clothes, my life. Then a woman passed me dry under her massive umbrella, earbuds in, not even noticing me. And I realized I wasn't just broke. I was invisible. That night, I sat on my floor, legs crossed in the middle of my cluttered studio apartment, and said out loud, "I just need one good thing." I don't know who I was saying it to, the universe, God, my reflection in the black screen of my dead TV. But I said it, and I meant it. The next day, I had a morning shift at the bookstore. The rain hadn't stopped. I was late. I couldn't afford another Uber, and my one umbrella, frayed, bent on one side but still functional, was all that stood between me and another drenching. I almost didn't take it, but something told me to. I walked quickly, head down, focused on getting through the day, surviving the hours until I could come back home and do it all over again. And then I saw him, an older man, maybe mid-60s, standing at the corner in a wool coat that had long since lost its battle with the rain. His shoulders were tense, like he was trying to shrink. His gray hair was soaked, his leather shoes ruined. But he wasn't flinching, just standing, waiting, still. No umbrella. I slowed down, just a little. People rushed past him, umbrellas raised high, pretending he wasn't there. A few glanced, then looked away. He didn't seem to be asking for anything. No hand out, no signs, just presence. I stopped in front of him. Our eyes met. There was no sadness in his face, no expectation, just exhaustion. Without thinking, I held out my umbrella. "You look like you need this more than I do," I said. "I live just around the corner." He blinked, surprised, took it, slowly. "May I know your name?" he asked. "Claire," I said, offering the smallest smile I could manage. "Have a better day." And then I turned and walked away. Rain falling down my back, socks soaked again, grocery bag clutched tight. I didn't look back. Because when you're that low, kindness doesn't feel like generosity. It feels like instinct. You give because you know what it's like to need something and be met with silence. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I certainly didn't expect what showed up outside my building the next morning. I didn't tell anyone about the umbrella. Not that there was anyone to tell, and besides, it didn't feel like a story, just a passing moment, a tiny gesture lost in the storm. I went to bed that night, assuming I'd never see that man again, but something about the way he looked at me had stayed with me. Not in a romantic way, not even in a curious way. It was deeper than that. It was like he wasn't used to being seen. Not for who he was, but for what he wasn't asking for. The next morning I woke up to the sound of something strange outside my window. Engines. Deep, low rumbling engines. Not traffic, not delivery vans. Something smoother. I pulled the blinds back and froze. A black limo was idling at the curb, polished, sleek, not like the ones people rent for proms or weddings. This one was different, understated, expensive in a quiet way, like it belonged to someone who didn't need to announce their wealth. Then I saw the driver, standing beside the car, in a crisp suit, holding a white placard with one word on it. Claire. I stepped back from the window like I'd seen a ghost. My first thought, scam or mistake. No one sends limos to people with $6.40 left in their bank account, and certainly not to apartments where the front door sticks and the mailbox has duct tape on it. Still, I threw on a hoodie and stepped outside in my slippers, heart pounding. The driver smiled when he saw me. "Miss Claire?" he asked. I nodded barely. "I've been asked to escort you. Mr. Bennett sends his regards and hopes you'll join him this morning." Mr. Bennett. I said nothing, just stared. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a small envelope. Thick, ivory paper. My name, handwritten on the front. Inside was a single card, the same texture as luxury stationery. It read, "Sometimes the smallest umbrellas offer the greatest shelter. Let me return the kindness. B." I looked up at the driver. "What is this?" I asked. He simply said, "A thank you and an invitation." I should have said no. It made no sense. I had a shift at the bookstore in 2 hours, wet hair, no makeup, and a phone battery at 2%, but I didn't say no. I said, "Give me 5 minutes." In the back of that limo, I felt like I was hallucinating. Leather seats that still smelled new, soft jazz playing at the perfect volume, bottled water in glass containers, a silk cloth laid neatly over the seat in case I needed to dry off. We didn't go far, but the drive felt endless. Not because of the time, because of where we were going, out of the city, into neighborhoods where the sidewalks were lined with trees, not trash cans, where houses had gates, and those gates had names. I recognized one street from a magazine cover, one address from a real estate listing I used to scroll past when I was bored, fantasizing about someday. And then we pulled up to one of those places, a modern mansion, glass and stone, not flashy, just solid, private, powerful. The driver stepped out, opened my door. He's waiting inside. I should have run. I should have questioned it all, but I didn't, because something told me this wasn't a setup. It was a reckoning. The front doors were already open when I stepped out of the limo. Not wide, just enough to say, "You're expected." That alone was surreal. I'd spent the last 6 months of my life trying not to be in anyone's way. Now someone was holding open the doors of a mansion just for me. Inside, everything was quiet. Not museum quiet, but intentional. There were no echoing marble floors or grand chandeliers, just warm wood, soft lighting, and the faint scent of something citrusy. Clean, controlled, elegant in a way I hadn't known existed in real life. I followed the sound of faint piano music until I turned a corner into a sitting room. He was there, the man from the rain, dry this time, hair brushed back, a crisp navy sweater over a white dress shirt, no tie, slippers instead of shoes. He looked like someone who didn't need to prove anything anymore. He stood when he saw me. "Claire," he said, like he was greeting someone he'd known forever. "I'm glad you came." I opened my mouth to speak and realized I had no idea what to say. "Thank you. What is this? Why me?" Instead, I said, "You didn't have to send a limo." He smiled gently. "No, but I wanted to." He gestured to the armchair across from him. "Sit, if you're comfortable." The couch was soft enough to sink into. There was tea already poured on the table. Real china, not ceramic mugs. He poured more into my cup without asking how I took it. Somehow it was perfect. "I didn't catch your name yesterday," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Bennett." That name clicked, faintly, like I'd seen it somewhere but couldn't place it, and then he said it. "You've probably never heard of me. Most people haven't, but I co-founded a company called Arbor Analytics." My heart skipped. That name I did recognize, from tech articles and startup stories, a data company that exploded during the pandemic and quietly turned its founders into billionaires. I remembered reading that one of them had disappeared from public life after a health scare. And there he was, drinking tea in slippers in front of me. "I used to be everywhere," he said. "Panels, conferences, interviews." Then my heart gave out. Literally. Just stopped one day while I was giving a speech. Woke up 2 days later in a hospital bed. And no one around me knew how to just sit with me. No one brought me water or silence. They just kept asking when I'd be back in the office. I didn't say anything. He looked up. Yesterday, I was standing in the rain outside a meeting I walked out of. I was having a moment. No car, no umbrella, no agenda, just me. And then you came. He looked me in the eye, voice quieter now. "You gave me your umbrella without asking who I was, without needing anything back. You didn't pity me. You didn't look through me. You just saw me." I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't cried in months, not real tears, not safe ones. "It was just an umbrella," I said, almost whispering. He shook his head. "No, it was shelter from the storm, and not just the weather." He reached behind his chair and pulled out a folder, thick, cream-colored, placed it on the table between us. "This is a job offer, personal executive assistant, flexible hours, full benefits, housing stipend. No trial period, just trust, if you want it." I stared at him. "You're serious?" Claire, he said, I've built companies, fired CEOs, and launched satellites, but I haven't been seen by someone with no agenda in a very long time, and I don't offer people things unless I mean it. I want to work with people who lead with grace. You did more for me in 30 seconds than most people have in 30 years. I couldn't speak. My hands were trembling. Ethan smiled. Say yes, because someone finally saw what you're worth, not just because you need the help. I didn't say yes right away, not because I didn't want to, but because when you've spent so long being overlooked, underestimated, or passed over, your first instinct is to flinch when someone finally offers you a seat at the table. It felt too good, too sudden, like the universe had made a mistake and would come clawing it back if I breathed too loud. Ethan must have sensed it. You don't have to decide right now, he said gently. Take the day or the week. I've waited longer for things that mattered less. I nodded, eyes still fixed on the folder, a symbol of possibility, sitting quietly in front of me like it belonged there. He stood, walked toward the window, his voice distant now. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people chasing things. Money, power, validation. They shake your hand with one arm while calculating how to take something with the other. And for a while, I was like them. He turned back to me. Then I almost died. And suddenly, all I could think about was the people I barely remembered and the moments I had ignored. The quiet kindnesses that didn't come with headlines or handshakes. That umbrella. It wasn't about rain. It was about choice. You chose to help someone you didn't know, while your world was probably falling apart. That's the kind of person I want in my life, in my company, in my orbit. He handed me his card and walked out, leaving me in that stunning, quiet room, alone with my thoughts and a folder that could rewrite my life. I sat there for what felt like an hour. I didn't open the folder right away. Instead, I thought about all the little moments that had led me here. The job rejections, the silent bank account, the moments where I gave more than I had to people who barely noticed. I thought about how many times I'd been told I was too quiet, or too soft, or too emotional to lead anything. And then I thought about Ethan Bennett, a man with 1,000 options, choosing me because I'd done something simple, human, and real. I accepted the job the next day. He didn't make me jump through hoops. There was no panel interview, no test project, just a meeting with his operations manager, a signature, and a handshake that felt more like an agreement between equals than an employer hiring help. My first day was quiet. He gave me a desk by a window and said, "Decorate it however you want. I trust your taste." And then he left me alone. No micromanaging, no condescension, just respect. Slowly, I began to breathe again, to sleep better, to laugh more. I moved into a small, beautiful studio apartment with a washer and dryer that didn't shake the building. I bought groceries without counting coins. I sent my mom a care package for the first time in years. But most importantly, I started seeing myself differently. Not as someone lucky to be rescued, but as someone finally seen for who she was all along. 6 months later, my old life feels like a dream I barely remember. Not because it was so long ago, but because it feels like someone else lived it. Someone who kept her head down. Someone who apologized too often. Someone who believed kindness only mattered when it was quiet and unacknowledged. Now, I still lead with kindness, but I no longer think it has to be invisible. Ethan, Mr. Bennett, as most still call him, insisted I drop the formalities. He said, "You can call me Ethan. You already treated me like a person before you knew my title. That's more than most." We built a rhythm. I manage his schedule, his travel, his quiet preferences that no one else seems to notice, like how he prefers ginger tea in the morning instead of coffee. I organize meetings, but I also help with something else, his new foundation. It's called Second Shelter, his idea, but my voice gave it shape. We now run donation drives for domestic shelters, schools, and food pantries. But more than anything, we give away umbrellas. Dozens, hundreds. Not cheap plastic ones, but durable, wind-resistant, beautiful umbrellas with small tags inside that read, "Kindness is shelter, pass it on." The first time I saw a woman on the street holding one, waiting at a crosswalk, tears sprang to my eyes. She had no idea who gave it to her. She didn't need to. Ethan told me once that I reminded him of his mother, someone who gave with her whole heart and never asked for anything back. She taught me that generosity isn't weakness, he said. It's power, quiet power. You have that. For the first time in my life, I believe it. I'm still me, still a little quiet, still not used to being the center of anything. But I walk taller now. I no longer flinch when someone offers me something good. I no longer apologize for taking up space. Because kindness doesn't mean you don't get to receive. It just means you know how to give without expectation. And somehow, that's exactly what changed my life. Final voiceover, over soft piano or gentle city sounds, I gave away my umbrella on the worst day of my life, thinking I was losing something small. But in that one moment, I was seen. Not because I was perfect, not because I was successful, but because I showed up with heart. And the next morning, the world showed up for me. Closing line. So the next time you see someone standing in the rain, give them shelter. You never know whose life you're about to change, or whose life might change yours.